I'm Nicholas Pfaff, Deputy CEO of ICMA and Head of Sustainable Finance. I'm here with Anjali Pandit, who's Managing Director, Sustainable Debt Capital Markets at HSBC. Anjali, we just come out of our panel on headwinds and tailwinds in the sustainable finance market. It was a really good conversation. What are your takeaways?
Well, it was a much more optimistic conversation, right, than we thought we might be having.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and I think people kept using the word optimism. I think the other thing people kept talking about was just being more pragmatic. That maybe some of this reset that's happening, the omnibus in Europe, might actually end up bringing the European regulation to being more, I think he said, user-friendly.
Yeah, belatedly.
Yeah, but he said it.
Right.
And you know, also in the U.S., right, there was some comments made by certain panelists that what's happening in the U.S. is also in some ways helpful to remind us that commercialization has to be at the key of the entire transition journey.
It was the economics of renewables, which is something which just means it's not going to stop no matter what.
No matter what's going to happen, right? And then that actually is the reason and the driver for it to continue and get more support. So overall, I was actually quite impressed with the opportunity that's coming, the number of projects down the line, the effort to sort of consolidate and make things simplified so it's easier for more people to access sustainable markets. Yeah,
we talked about international standards with ISSB and transition plans.
And again, simplifying those and making them more user-friendly. Thinking through what you need for larger corporates versus the context what you need for smaller corporates. I think there's also been a reframing that came out in a lot of the conversation about understanding the nuance between regions. What does Asia actually need that might be a different definition than what other parts need, and we don't need one global definition.
Yeah, transition isn't the same everywhere. Yeah, one of the really interesting parts of the conversation was when I was asking you, what is the sustainable bond market doing well or not so well when financing the transition? Yeah,
and I sort of alluded to the fact that there's still a lot more to do, and I think we're kind of early in the journey. Look, we've done really well at thinking through how to bring governance and credibility to financing green assets.
Right.
And that was really sorely needed in the market.
The green bit.
Yeah, and we can see that, right? Look at the take-up, up to 20-something% in the European markets. Globally, it's at around 10% of the market this year. It was 13% last year. This is a core part of the global debt capital markets.
Yeah, it's renewables, energy efficient buildings, clean transportation, all that stuff. Yeah.
So it was a needed requirement. Right. Now we're reaching a point in the global markets. Well, okay, we're reaching a point in society that we need to understand transition assets, because it's this big, huge gray area, right, that is missing disclosure. And that disclosure is even more obvious because we have such strong disclosure on the green side, right? And so we have a challenge.
This is the hard to abate. This is the fossil fuel. This is the difficult part of transition you're talking about.
I mean, this is scope 1 and 2, right? Because energy efficiency of all sectors is key. So this is methane abatement. This is moving out of coal. The answer is not going to be coal immediately to all renewables. It's moving from coal to natural gas in some countries. It's moving from oil to natural gas and the displacement of liquid fuel in other countries, right? It's finding different types of fuel mixes that are less emissions but not necessarily green, right? It's thinking through every single sovereign country's transition journey in terms of maybe having to build new cities, electrify hundreds of millions of people in some countries, right? But having a growth strategy for those countries, having populations that are still growing, but at the same time having climate targets that they want to start delivering on, in the lead up to 2050, right? And a lot of that stuff in there is not going to be green in the sense of what we have decided to define as a market as green. And so that area needs disclosure.
Right.
And there's no real definition that this is transition, this is not transition. It's going to be different in each region, in each country, in each sector. And so it's going to probably not be able to have kind of clear taxonomies like the green market chose sort of to develop, right? So we're going to have to think about credibility and integrity in a different way. And that's going to be a big challenge for us at ICMA, because obviously we want disclosure wherever disclosure can happen, because that helps make better decisions, it educates us, it informs us. But it's also going to be a big challenge for the market participants, because market participants have to start now questioning what do they want to get out of sustainable investing. Do they want a green portfolio where they feel really comfortable and confident about the credibility of the underlying assets, the supply chain, the disclosure around those things? Or do they want a portfolio that will transition the economy?
Which is actually more impactful.
And also very different.
Right.
Right? If you want one that transitions the economy, yes, you're sort of trying to help the whole world get to net zero.
Yeah.
Right? But you're also having to really heavily fund the hard to abate sectors.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who need to do the most amount of work and invest the most capex into new technology and innovation.
Right.
That's a very, very different ballgame. It's happening, it started, right? You were talking about it, you said,
Yes.
Isn't it happening so much in Asia? We had a panelist from Japan explaining it, right? But it's happening kind of on the periphery.
Yes.
And without sort of the total global investor and financial institution buy-in.
All right. So we've got our work cut out for
We've
ourselves.
got a lot to do.
Perfect. Anjali, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.